Hello everyone, welcome back to another talk. This particular talk was inspired by Moist Critical, aka Charlie's video on major names in content creation starting to burn out and retire, so to speak, right? And I wanted to talk about that for a little bit because a lot of people are there's a lot of conversation about it. There has been for a while, and I wanted to tackle a few points on this subject, but I'm going to launch off of what Charlie says. I might link that in the description below just so you have context. It's a 13-minute video from him on burnout and that, but he talks primarily about streaming, not exclusively, but primarily, and he makes the extremely excellent observation that a lot of these people who are suffering from burnout are sort of locked into one area, right? Whether, it's a specific type of game, or even one specific game, and doing the same thing every day is monotonous. It is. This is part of the reason why the less burned out content creators have multiple things. In fact, this is a big reason why Charlie, as he mentions in his video, has branched out to a variety of different areas. Not only does he stream, but he also has his own comic. He's got a pro gaming team, and he's got, of course, his new wrestling promotion. He's got other things going on that he uses not only because he is interested in doing them, but because it mixes things up. Okay? And that's how he maintains his sanity, so to speak. But for other content creators who are locked into this one thing, there are actually two risks to sticking with one specific thing. The first, as you can see most clearly in Minecraft content creators, your popularity as a content creator hinges upon the popularity of that game. You can actually see, for at least the early Minecraft content creators, where as Minecraft got more and more popular, they got more and more viewers, and then Minecraft's popularity took a hit, and so did their viewership. And then Minecraft became popular again, and so did they. Minecraft is the best example of this popularity problem. And then, of course, we have, as Charlie talks about, and a lot of content creators talk about actually, is the burnout of content creation. And burnout happens much faster if you're locked into either one specific game or slightly, almost as often, a specific genre. For example, somebody who bounces from Call of Duty to Fortnite to Battlefield, just to throw another name out there, that person will burn out slower than somebody just playing Minecraft, but eventually they will burn out because the gameplay is similar enough where they're still going to eventually get tired of it. This is one of the reasons I diversify so much. Now, I'm not doing this for money. I don't intend to make money out of my YouTube channel. I just do this for kicks. Whether or not you believe me is totally up to you. But that's the reason why I do all kinds of different things. And why I'm mixing up my schedule all the time. Well, I've got to balance it with my job, of course. My job, of which has slightly longer than normal hours, depending on what's going on at work, but that's neither here nor there. But that's why I mix this up. I don't want to get burned out because I enjoy this. I do this for enjoyment. Alright? and I create my videos in the same style as the videos that I enjoyed when I was younger. Very pure, unedited stuff. I do some editing occasionally, but as you can probably tell, I do not that much editing, right? Again, your opinion on that is totally up to you. But I like variety. I have these talks. I've got some Let's Play going on in the background because I like them. I've got Grim Dawn videos. I've got Smite videos. I'm narrating a book because I felt like it. And because it's talking about things that I just feel like talking about as well, but I have a context around which to talk about it rather than these pretty random talks where I just think about something and then I talk about it on here. And a lot of people, this has been a conversation, to be honest. There's been videos on the struggles of content creation since a year or two ago, right? This has been sort of in content creators' minds as children when they're asked what they want to be when they grow up. They say content creator. Sometimes they have a specific platform. Sometimes they say YouTuber. Sometimes they say TikToker, whatever. But an increasingly large number of kids want to get into this, which is fine. There's nothing necessarily wrong with that. But there's a lot of things about that they aren't being told. Actually, a great video on this is Super Eyepatch Wolf's video on content creator YouTube courses, where content creators on YouTube try to sell courses to kids to teach them the secrets of being on YouTube. There isn't really a secret to succeeding on YouTube. It's a combination of luck, having the right content being released at the right time, and personality. Alright? It's that combination. Right? And if you don't enjoy it, don't do it. Because if you don't enjoy it, that's going to come through the videos. Personally, again, I'm doing this for fun. I like the interaction with comments. I like the just having a video out there, a little piece of me just out there. That's actually the main point of these talks. These talks are more about having a part of me kicking around out there. I might not be emotionally invested in very many of these topics, as I've been criticized for before, which is fair. For me, these are largely just my thoughts on a variety of things, but it's part of me. It's my thoughts. It's my opinions based on those thoughts, and just a sort of part of me kicking around out there. A record that I existed in thought, so to speak. And that's between fun and leaving a record that I existed. That's pretty much what this is for me. But that's not what a lot of people want out of this. And what's also really interesting to notice is a lot of the content creators, the big names in content creation that are suffering burnout right now, are people who played video games for fun, for an escape, for relief from daily life, and just turned on video recording software. Because while they were playing video games, why not record it? Right? That's basically what that was. And now that gaming is their job, it no longer serves the same function. It's no longer the escape that it used to be. And so what used to be their reprieve is now their job, and now they need something else for reprieve. So they go and do something else. Which is fine. I'm not criticizing them. That's totally their lives, their decisions. No problem. And a lot of people react with understandable emotion. If your favorite content creator decides they're going to retire from content creation or take a really extended break to go do whatever else, and they were your favorite content creator, you're very understandably going to be upset. I don't blame people for that. That's a very understandable reaction. But what this does is it opens the door for newer content creators, for the next generation of content creators, so to speak. This is really healthy for the content creation ecosystem, realistically. Right? This gives other people who want to make it a career the opportunity to, if they have that right combination of luck, circumstances, and content, they can step up and fill in that space eventually. Obviously, it's not going to happen overnight for most people, if any people, but it opens up doors for other people newer on the scene, which is good. We get the fresh blood in here, we get the new ideas, we get the new viewpoints. That's great. So, while it is understandable why people would get upset or concerned about this, this is, quite frankly, good for content creation as a whole. And there's always someone new to watch. The people I watch today largely are not the people I watched 5 years ago, 10 years ago. There are a couple of constants. I watch Markiplier fairly consistently. Not as much as I used to. I'll admit that. I don't watch Markiplier quite as much as I used to, but I still watch a decent number of his vids. Tio, I watch. I've been watching him for a while. But my interests have expanded, and so has my consumption of content. The general direction of my content has shifted a bit more from pure entertainment to a combination of entertainment and education. Not edutainment, since that tends to be weak. I tend to either listen to educational content or watch entertaining content. There's a difference. They're not combined, they're two separate genres that I tend to pay attention to. And that's normal. It is very normal for someone's taste in content to change as they grow older. Very normal. And again, the old names leaving, retiring, so to speak, and the new names coming in to take their place also allows content creation as a whole to better adapt to newer sensibilities, newer generations, new perspectives, which again is just overall good for content creation. And that's something else not a lot of people really talk about. When Charlie was talking about this in his video, he was really focusing in on the individual, which is really understandable because a lot of content creation is very individual. That's why parasocial relationships are formed. Right? You have this person putting out a piece themselves in the form of some form of content, whether it be music, podcast, video series, or streaming. That's a lot of times, even if it's not all of their personality, even if they're faking some of it, which many do, almost all of them do, you still have at least part of them in that. That's inevitable with all art, which you can argue content creation is a form of art. But anyways, and so parasocial relationships form, and it's very understandable for people with that to be upset when their favorite content creator leaves. It's like your friend moving to another country, right? And maybe you see them once in a while in the news or in some unrelated video or something. But your friends moved to another country. And I use the term friend here because I don't necessarily see perceiving a content creator as a friend to be parasocial, at least a regular friend, right? I wouldn't say that a close friendship would be a normal parasocial thing, right? That's parasocial in my opinion, but to feel like you are a friend distantly of someone who creates content you like, I don't consider that too abnormal, because to some extent we're going to connect with people who we watch or listen to. That connection that we feel is human. That's normal. It's when that goes too far that I define it as parasocial. And speaking of parasocial relationships, this is something that a lot of content creators have been really beginning to talk about, but not too in depth, because let's be brutally honest. All content creators benefit from parasocial relationships, even if they don't want to admit it. Parasocial relationships generates, for a lot of content creators, money. Patreon, stream donations, contributions to a legal fund maybe, things like that. Right? And in some cases, parasocial relationships can be very dangerous. You can look at the example of Amaranth, Anita, that other streamer who I only recently discovered had her car burned by some stalker lunatic. For the life of me, I can't remember her username. I apologize for that, but it's you can find that online. Parasocial relationships absolutely can be dangerous, but for the most part, most people benefit from them. Most content creators benefit from it, just directly. And some use it to try to form either an actual cult or create cult-like behavior, right? And this is very common in religiously focused content creation. This is very common in politically focused content creation. This is very common in mano or womanosphere content creation. Very common for them to try to emulate certain cult techniques to better attach the audience to what they're saying so they can get the audience to believe what they want them to believe. Very much of benefit to those content creators. People usually with some kind of political or usually these are content creators with a specific viewpoint, whether it be social, political, or religious, and they want to convert other people to that. They will typically use cult tactics for this. Us versus them, ideology, I'm the only one telling you the truth, messaging, things like that, right? Very common in those three spheres. Other spheres as well, but those are the big ones. But yeah, parasocial relationships benefit content creators, especially if they're trying to make money or they are trying to convert people to some specific cause. And while some content creators speak out against parasocial relationships, a lot don't. An interesting example of this is actually Ludwig, who alternates between denouncing parasocial relationships and reinforcing parasocial relationships. It's very interesting, because on the one hand, I think on a moral level, Ludwig is against them, because it's not good in most cases for a member of an audience to develop too parasocial a relationship to the content creator. A lot of times that is a negative for the viewer and a positive for the content creator. So parasocial relationships don't benefit the viewer in most cases. And he recognizes that, and when he's feeling particularly bad about it, he'll go out and denounce it. But on the other hand, he benefits from parasocial relationships, as all content creators do, and so he turns around and reinforces them, right? This isn't unusual in content creators. I believe XQC does the same thing as far as I've seen, where he'll flip-flop between denouncing parasocial relationships or either reinforcing or encouraging them. I don't pay as close attention to XQC. I know I can't say I know. I'm pretty sure he's made statements both for and against parasocial relationships. But that's part of content creation. Even for someone like me who is doing this for kicks, if I get big enough, whether or not I do doesn't matter, but if I do, then that's something that I'm going to have to deal with in some way or another, is people becoming parasocially attached to me. Since I'm not here for the money, that's going to be less harmful for them. Again, you can believe me or not, that's totally up to you, and if you're skeptical, absolutely excellent, you should be. Let's be brutally honest. You should be skeptical of my words here. Don't just take me at my word here. Wait until my actions prove it. Because it's dangerous to take someone just at their word. But not being here for the money makes me less dangerous on that front than someone who is after the money. For example, crypto bros, really fond of parasocial relationships because that gets them money. And they will encourage parasocial relationships as much as possible because they know this. Right? This is why a lot of anti-crypto YouTubers discourage parasocial relationships even among their own audience. Callum Upton, Kira TV. These content creators and ones like them typically discourage parasocial relationships with their own audiences because it's not great for their audiences. And it's just really interesting talking about content creation as a content creator, because on the one side, and parasocial relationships as well, because it's part of content creation, where most people want to talk about it, but it benefits them so they don't actually do so. Or if they do talk about parasocial relationships, they're going to be really either vague or they're not going to get too depth into it. And for content creation, they simultaneously want to have their cake and eat it too. Content creation is work. Alright? You have to put in effort here. Alright? At least if you're going to make this a career. I don't do that much editing because, quite honestly, not only is this the kind of video style I like, and therefore I am going to create the videos that I like, but also I dislike editing, and again, I'm not looking to make this a career, so editing isn't important to me. Right? But if you're going to get into this professionally, which some of you may, you will need to know editing, or pay someone to edit for you. If I ever do go into this professionally, I would pay someone to edit. I wouldn't do it myself. Which is what a lot of content creators do. Not many of them... There's a period of time, for most content creators, where they start out, they don't do much editing, and when they start getting big, they do their own editing. They gotta step up their production values, after all. And then, when they get big enough, and they no longer have the capacity or the time to edit, they hire somebody else. You can see this all the time. Constantly. And that's just how a lot of it runs. But something else not a lot of people talk about, in fact, I've heard almost nobody talk about, I've heard a couple of people talk about it in real life, but almost nobody talks about the interesting fact of children wanting to be content creators when they grow up, because this has greater implications than, oh, they just want to be content creators, which is fine. I'm not decrying that. I'm not denouncing that. That's not a bad thing. But look at it from the other side, right? This is a really interesting change for workforces across the globe. Why? Well, a couple of reasons. Content creation is really easy to break into. Technically speaking, all you need is recording software, which there's a lot of free recording software out there, and a microphone, which at its most expensive will run you over $100, but a lot of people can get a decent mic for $100 or less, right? It's easy to start content creation. It's also easy to do content creation in your free time. Say, while you're a high school student, middle school student even. Some content creators that are experiencing burnout in their 20s started when they were a teenager. Right? Super easy to break into. That's why there's so many YouTube channels. It's why there's so many streamers. It's easy to get into. If you already play video games, all you have to do is record with recording software and plug in a mic. Maybe you get a camera, maybe you don't. That's totally up to you, but it's really easy to break into. And it has come to the point where there is at least the awareness that in order to do content creation as a full-time job, you have to put in work. You have to edit, you have to create interesting videos, you have to appeal to the audience. That takes time, that takes effort, that takes dedication. And at the end of the day, if it's really interesting where no one's talking about the future of content creators retiring, because they've developed skills in a very specific area. Namely, you could make an argument that they have public relations experience, content creation experience, obviously. Most have editing experience. Public speaking, if you consider that separate from public relations. But outside of that, not a whole lot of experience. For example, you're not going to see very many content creators go from creating a YouTube channel to go right into, say, finance or accounting, unless they've had experience beforehand and go back to it after YouTube. Which is why, if any of you listening ever want to get into content creation, take my advice. Do it as a side gig until you make it, if and or when you make it big enough to do it full time. The reason why is because if you dedicate all of your time on content creation and it doesn't work, which for a lot of people it doesn't, you're stuck with 2, 3, 4 years, however long you spent trying to become a full-time content creator, however many years you spent trying to become a full-time content creator was years spent not developing skills. Do it as a side gig until or unless you make it big. Do a full-time or at least a part-time job where you can develop skills and experience, or at the same time get educated, get a degree, get a certification even. Certifications are great. Go to a trade school maybe. Something. Don't just look to content creation, because if that fails, you're screwed. Because for high knowledge or high skill positions, you've just spent however many years not developing the skills or education or knowledge that you will need to work your way up. And while eventually you might work your way up at some point, you're starting from behind. Something else not a lot of content creators talk about. Some do. Some talk about how they worked other jobs while they were trying to make it big in content creation. Super Eye Patch Wolf has 6 to 10 years or something like that, working various jobs while he was creating random YouTube videos, basically. Until eventually he made it big, and now he can do it full time. Which is great, because if Super Eye Patch Wolf, as an example yet again, ever decides to stop creating YouTube videos, he has a skill base where he can go and find a new position. And you might think to yourself, well, Professor, he's just spent however many years making YouTube videos full time. Wouldn't that make him an unattractive option? He would be a less attractive option for hiring than, say, some other people, but considering the interesting job market currently and fewer people being able to afford college, fewer people looking to necessarily get into various forms of work. Sneezing. It's not as bad as you would think. Yes, he still would be behind the 8 ball to some extent, but not as much as, say, somebody who spent 4 years trying to create a professional YouTube channel and failing and not having anything, right? He's got some background experience in a variety of things. So, no matter how you slice it, regardless of whether he decides to ever retire from YouTube or not, he'll be fine eventually. But that's something else not a lot of people talk about, right? So, with that being said, I also want to point out that the people who experience the fastest burnout are streamers. Because you miss a couple of days. Actually, Charlie points this out. He missed 4 days. He lost 8 or 9,000 subscribers. And he hasn't gotten them back. Streaming is harder than any other form of content creation, because you have to be there every day. You hear about this all the time. You hear about streamers complaining about streaming a lot. Okay? Tons. Streaming is hard. If you are going to get into content creation, I recommend against streaming specifically. Do YouTube videos. Maybe stream occasionally. If you're going to stream, don't become a daily streamer. Be a weekend streamer. Or a weekdays streamer. And make it consistent. Stick to that schedule. The problem with a lot of daily streamers is that they've created this expectation that they'd be on every day. Which, given that some streaming sites require a certain number of hours per month streaming, that makes sense. But if you set the precedent ahead of time, right at the get-go, hey, I'll be streaming, say, every weekday, 5 days a week, 2 days off. people will be there and they will know. People will accept that. Most people. And when you stop streaming over the weekend, they'll go watch something else over the weekend. They'll develop a habit. They'll watch you during the weekdays, and then on the weekends, they'll watch something else while you take the weekend off, do your own thing, and then run the whole thing back up on Monday. Stream 9 to 5 on weekdays. Make it a full-time job, 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. Weekends off. Boom. No problem. People will watch something else. Or if you're working a job, work your job 9 to 5, stream on the weekends. You'll catch the audience, the non-weekday streamers. But you have to set the precedent first. You have to lay that down first. Assuming, of course, that you have the combination of luck, personality, and content that can cause you to be successful in streaming. But keep that in mind. If any of you listening want to stream, don't do it daily. Create a schedule and stick to that, but don't make it a 7 days a week schedule. Don't ever do a daily stream, because that is the biggest problem a lot of streamers have, is that they are daily streamers and they burn out. Do not be a daily streamer. I don't care how successful it might make you. In the long run, you'll crash and burn. You might become really successful daily streaming in the short term, however long that short term is, a couple of years, 5 years, whatever. But in the long term, if you want to do this permanently, if you want to stream permanently, I don't stream. I used to. And I made the same mistake. If you are going to stream, don't make it daily. Period. Set a schedule. 5 days a week max. Stick to that. People will still be there. They'll just, while you're not streaming, they'll find something else to watch. It'll be fine. But that's what I wanted to talk about today. With that being said, thank you all very much for listening. If you liked this, please like and subscribe. If you didn't, please ignore me. And if you have any comments, questions, concerns, ideas, suggestions, or requests, please leave them down in the comment section below. And thank you all very much for joining me, and have a great 24 hours.